He was just the janitor, until he walked up to the board and started solving the impossible problem no student could touch. Laughter turned to silence. Even the teacher froze, eyes wide. But what happened next shook the entire school. First, let's go back to the beginning. Elijah's hand hovered above the chalk tray for a moment, his fingers rough from decades of labor curling gently around the stub of white. The room hushed, the mockery stalled by the quiet absurdity of what was happening. He stared at the board, his brow furrowed, not in confusion, but recollection. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Then, with measured precision, he began to write. Each mark he made was confident, deliberate, no hesitation. His writing curved differently than Thompson's tidy, angular scrawl. His was slower, older, with the rhythm of someone trained not by textbooks, but by time. Symbols unfolded across the board like an ancient language being remembered. Indices, limits, clever substitutions, a transformation of the proof from meaningless abstraction into fluid logic. It wasn't just that he solved the problem, it was how he moved through it, skipping unnecessary steps, choosing elegant paths, the kind only a seasoned mathematician would see. No one laughed now. Mr. Thompson stood frozen near his desk, forced smile dying on his lips. The class watched in stunned silence. Behind Elijah, students leaned forward in their seats, eyes flicking from the chalk to the custodian's unreadable face. A few exchanged glances, uneasy, puzzled. Was this real? When Elijah placed the chalk back in the tray, his hands were steady. He stepped aside, letting the full solution stare back at the room in white brilliance against the blackboard. No drama, no pride, just finality. He turned toward Mr. Thompson. Their eyes met, briefly. "Board's dirty," Elijah said flatly. "Thought I'd clean it." He didn't wait for a response. He walked out slowly, the echo of his boots tapping down the hallway like a metronome counting something only he could hear. The mop bucket rattled behind him. Inside the classroom, the silence stretched long. Then, softly, someone whispered, "Did that just happen?" Mr. Thompson swallowed. "He probably just remembered it from somewhere," he said, voice thinner than usual. "It's not like he really understood it." But the proof was still there, flawless, and so was the silence. For the first time in years, Elijah Brooks had been seen, not as a joke, not as background, but as something far more disruptive, a question. One no one in that room could answer yet, not even Mr. Thompson. No one moved. The room, once pulsing with adolescent noise and careless laughter, now felt vacuum-sealed. Not even the air dared to shift as Elijah Brooks turned his back on the stunned classroom. His boots tapped against the linoleum floor, soft but final, each step dragging behind it a silence that felt almost sacred. Mr. Thompson stood at the front of the room, blinking like someone waking from anesthesia. He approached the chalkboard slowly, his sharp jaw now slack, the smirk that once carved lines into his face erased by something harder to wear. Disbelief. He scanned the proof again, his eyes darting from symbol to symbol, searching for error. Not because he wanted to humiliate Elijah now, but because he needed there to be one. Needed it the way a drowning man needs to believe the surface is close. There wasn't. Every transformation, every substitution, every limiting behavior, correct. More than correct. Efficient, intuitive, artful. In the third row, Maya Chen, valedictorian candidate, mathlete since age 10, proud owner of a framed acceptance letter to MIT, was still staring at the board, her brows drawn tight with something that looked like awe. She had tried the problem earlier that week, working on it in the back pages of her notebook when Thompson introduced it as extra credit. She hadn't come close. And yet here it was, solved before her eyes not with a dramatic flourish, but with the quiet composure of a man folding laundry. One of the students lowered his phone, the recording light still blinking. The smug intent behind capturing a prank had drained away, replaced by something more cautious, reverent even, as if they'd just filmed something they didn't fully understand, something that didn't belong in a classroom prank reel. "Dude," someone whispered near the back. "Who is he?" No one answered. Even Thompson, who normally had a deflection ready for anything, didn't speak. His hand rose absently to his neck as if he felt a collar tightening. He looked toward the hallway where Elijah had disappeared, mop bucket wheels still faintly squeaking as they faded into the distance. In that moment, the joke that had once promised Thompson 5 minutes of viral glory had curdled into a question that unsettled everyone. What else had they missed? What other stories had walked their halls unseen, unheard, unnoticed? Elijah had solved the problem. But he'd left behind a different kind of equation, one with no clear answer. By Monday morning, Lincoln High School was unrecognizable, not in brick and mortar, but in atmosphere. A place once indifferent to its own heartbeat now felt like the center of the universe. Reporters lined the sidewalk, students whispered with a new kind of reverence, and Elijah Brooks, who had once passed through the hallways like a ghost, now couldn't walk 10 feet without someone stopping, staring, or fumbling for a photo. The video had crossed 1 million views in under 12 hours. By the end of the weekend, it was everywhere, shared by celebrities, dissected by academics, championed by activists. "Custodian solves elite math problem in minutes." That was the headline. Clean, viral, clickable. But it wasn't the truth, not the whole of it. What the world didn't know, what even the principal hadn't known, was that Elijah Brooks wasn't just some brilliant outlier with a mop. 25 years earlier, he had stood at the front of packed lecture halls at MIT, chalk in hand, theories blooming beneath his fingertips. He had been Dr. Elijah Brooks, author of 5 peer-reviewed papers on topological invariance, keynote speaker at international conferences, finalist for tenure before he turned 35. But genius doesn't shield anyone from grief. When his sister died suddenly in a head-on collision outside Decatur, everything changed. Overnight, Elijah became the only family left for 3 children under 10. He didn't hesitate. He packed his life into boxes, said goodbye to Cambridge, and moved back to Georgia. No grants, no lectures, no whiteboards lined with equations, just bills, custody papers, and 3 pairs of frightened eyes looking up at him for answers. He tried to teach part-time at community colleges, but the hours didn't align with school pickups. So he took the job that guaranteed he'd be home by 4. Custodian. It paid just enough. It didn't matter. He never let it matter. "They needed a father more than the world needed another mathematician," he said years later, his voice steady, not a trace of bitterness in it. When the media storm hit, his former students came forward, one after another. Testimonials poured in from doctoral candidates and professors, from hedge fund managers and NASA engineers. They didn't call him a janitor. They called him doctor. They didn't speak of his mop. They spoke of the way he'd made the abstract feel intimate, the way he made impossible problems feel like poems. Elijah never asked for the spotlight, but when it found him, it didn't illuminate something new. It revealed the truth they'd never bothered to see. Mr. Jared Thompson stood just outside the principal's office, spine stiff, fingers tapping nervously against a clipboard he no longer had any reason to hold. Beyond the glass doors of the gym, a quiet chaos unfolded. Camera crews adjusted lighting, sound techs whispered, a line of folding chairs clattered into formation. Somewhere in that growing hum, his own name had become something else, not synonymous with authority, not even with ridicule anymore, just discomfort. He hadn't been fired, Not officially, but the chill in the faculty lounge, the emails gone unanswered, the slight widening of distance when students passed him in the hallway, it was a sentence without a verdict. Even Maya Chen, once eager to linger after class and debate proofs, now gave him nothing more than a polite nod, eyes anchored to the floor. Whatever camaraderie he had built was unraveling one thread at a time. Inside the gym, the bleachers were full. Students who once slouched and whispered now sat upright, expectant. The buzz wasn't for Thompson. It was for the man who'd mopped their floors. Elijah Brooks stepped up to the podium with the same quiet presence he brought to everything. He hadn't changed his clothes, still wore the dark blue uniform with his name embroidered above the pocket, still moved with that unhurried grace that said he'd never needed to prove anything to anyone. But his voice carried. "Everyone you meet knows something you don't," Elijah began, his eyes sweeping across the sea of young faces. "Respect is free. Give it before you think you have to." No flair, no flourish, just truth, stated plainly, like a theorem already proven. The silence in the gym was absolute. It wasn't the silence of boredom or obligation. It was reverence. The kind that demands stillness, the kind that settles into the spine and stays. Then applause. Not polite, but thunderous. It rolled through the bleachers like a tide, and Elijah didn't soak in it. He turned toward the edge of the stage and gestured to 3 young adults sitting near the front, his niece and nephews, now college students. Their eyes shone with pride. "That's the math I'm most proud of," he said, and smiled, not for the cameras, not for validation, but as a father figure who had finished the hardest proof of all. Afterward, Thompson approached, apology balanced carefully on his tongue. Elijah shook his hand, a firm grip, a single nod. Then he turned and walked away, and Thompson was left holding something heavier than guilt. The understanding that forgiveness and respect do not arrive on cue.